guys. Hello, baseball romantics, and welcome back to the Romantic About Baseball podcast. We're rolling into episode 6. Nico here with one of my battery mates, Bruce, aka the great closer of the RAB podcast team. Jason's out this week as he's soaking in some sunshine at Truist Park, watching some baseball, watching his Braves take on the Dodgers here on Sunday night. Have fun out there, Captain, and we're looking forward to getting you back next week. Today, Bruce and I are going to be diving into our weekly review of the week that was in the American and National League, giving our thoughts on some of the action that occurred this past week, as well as the season thus far as we cruise into May. First, Bruce, how are you, man? And Camden Yards yesterday, watching the Orioles take on the Royals.
Yeah, man, great. It was really awesome to be able to visit Camden Yards. First time Camden Yards, hadn't been down there in spite of the fact that it's only 2 hours from my house. Just never really, never found a reason or excuse to go down there and take in a game. But I have to say that as soon as I walked in, my first impression was, wow, this is the most beautiful ballpark I've ever been to. You know, I walked in and just really felt that feeling of we're going to play baseball today, and there's green grass and there's dirt on the field, and everybody's going to go out there and just give it their all. And that's kind of what they did in Baltimore. And the beautiful thing about it is that was the first stadium built like that, and everybody's replicated it since then. And I just haven't felt that way in other stadiums. And the Citizens Bank Park's a great ballpark. You know, I go there all the time. That's my home ballpark. But it just falls short of that feeling you get in Camden Yards. The only other park that I've been to that gives you that similar feeling is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. You know, which one's better? I don't know. But when I was in Camden Yards, I thought it was Camden Yards. I'm going to try and get back out to PNC again this year, and maybe I'll feel that way when I walk into PNC again. I don't know. It's just that feeling you get when you walk in. But doing great. Happy to have had that experience down there. Happy to have spent a little bit of time with Jason at the ballpark, which was great.
Yeah, I mean, Camden Yards it's a special ballpark. It's frequently been ranked one of the nicest parks. I last visited in the summer of 2022. Back, the team was very similar, except, we had a couple other guys. Trey Mancini was there. I believe they played the Tampa Bay Rays. It's a beautiful park. I recommend any of our listeners or our fans of the page to go check it out. It's a little bit more affordable than some of the other parks. I mean, I'm out here in the Northeast, so I typically go to Fenway or New York, and it's a little bit more economical to go to the Camden Yards. But definitely recommend it. Glad you guys went there and had the opportunity to watch some American League ball. I'm going to be diving into some American League baseball here shortly. So,
and you're absolutely right. The tickets were half the price of what I pay at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah, right, exactly. We're in the wrong area of the country, Bruce. But hey, hopefully the Orioles fans, we're happy to see you guys out there. I'm not sure if anybody recognize you guys, but we've been talking a lot of Orioles on the podcast, and hey, we're pulling for them, especially me. I had them in the World Series. I'm kind of afraid to say that at this point, but hey, long season ahead of us. So yeah, we're gonna dive into our AL and NL weekly analysis and go over some of the headlines here in the American League. So I'll start off with the American League, and then I'll pass it to Bruce and get some of his thoughts with the American League before we go National League. I'm going to kick things off in the AL West. Kind of the shiny new object in the AL West, that being the Seattle Mariners, the first place Seattle Mariners, winners of 8 straight series wins. They were on a 6-game winning streak coming into today. They did lose to the Rangers, but still won the series, but nothing to hang your head on, right? It's been exciting for Seattle fans, right? Well, we sort of expected Seattle to come into this season with a top tier rotation. We knew the rotation was A plus, but we were concerned about the offense. There's Julio Rodriguez is there, Cal Raleigh's there, but hey, the Mariners are winning with offense, and the rotation is not winning these ball games. And it's really turning heads. You see guys like Jorge Polanco, just an absolute breakout player of the American League thus far in the season. He's been an absolute tear. Kind of reminds you of Jurickson Profar, when Jurickson Profar was kind of a journeyman, and then he kind of found his legs in San Diego, and obviously with the PED suspension. But he's been incredible for that Mariners lineup. I mean, what a difference maker he's been. 31 years old. He's been in the pros for many years now, and he's sort of reinvigorating himself in Seattle, which is great to see. And you're getting contributions from a slew of veteran players, Dylan Moore, Rowdy Tellez. Remember Rowdy in Pittsburgh, and that whole mess up when they benched him just so he couldn't get another hit for that part of his salary or whatever. I'm not sure, Bruce. You might remember that.
Oh, I remember it. That's a very Pirates move, right there.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, the cheap Pittsburgh Pirates, right? But yeah, Dylan Moore, Rowdy Tellez, and even Randy Rosarina is starting to come on as of late, and he's starting to see, hey, maybe Tampa Randy's coming back and reinvigorating himself in Seattle. So this team has found offense all over the lineup. It's exciting. And my message to Mariners fans, enjoy the ride. But remember, they haven't held on to a first-place lead in decades. So enjoy it, and we'll see where it takes us. And I guess what we can lean on is we can say, hey, we're hitting really well. The offense has been explosive, and we know we've got the pitching. So let's just see if we can carry this on, into May, June, July, etc. But it's an exciting time for Mariners and Mariners fans. So definitely enjoy the ride. It'll be interesting to see. They're going to be traveling to Sutter Health Ballpark this week to play the A's, who are putting together some really nice baseball as of late. They're starting to quietly surprise some people and talk about maybe the A's are going to be maybe a wild card team, because with the AL, it's wide open as we speak. Nobody's really out of it besides the White Sox. I mean, every single team in the AL is very much alive, and with those wild card spots available, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this plays out as we go through May and June.
And great series.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like every time they play in Sutter Health Park, it's just like home runs, and just
the ball flies out there, doesn't it?
Oh, it flies. It definitely flies. You definitely can tell these guys are definitely above that ballpark. But it'll be fun to watch. And then I'd like to flip it over to the Texas Rangers a little bit, Bruce. Really struggling right now. They're a game under 500, and a lot of people's favorite heading into the season to win the West. Right? Yeah, I think Jason as well. Jason also had Texas, I believe, going to the World Series, which it was a hot pick. I mean, how can you not like that team? Sitting one game under 500. Jake Berger, who they had hoped would add some pop to that lineup that already had plenty of it, he got sent down to AAA, believe it or not.
He did.
And that's very surprising. I mean, he was a slugger on the Marlins. Maybe it's a little bit of playing with no expectations down in Miami and now coming to Texas with some expectations, but he hasn't performed. And then veteran Jock Peterson coming into today, batting .091 in 81 at-bats for Jock Peterson. I know he's been around the world and back. It seems like Jock's played in every team in the NL West. He's making his runs on every team, but didn't expect him to struggle that much. And then a couple other cornerstone guys like Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia, they're off to some really slow starts. So a little bit of concerning time in Texas, but I will say this. Bruce Bochy's there. I love the GM, Chris Young. I think they're going to figure it out. There's just too much talent on that team. Jacob deGrom's been healthy. The pitching's been sort of what they've leaned on so far. So I'm still buying stock with Texas. I think they're going to figure it out. I still like him in the West. I'm sorry, Mariners fans. I just don't trust that offense in Seattle to carry the weight. Um, so a little bit of a concerning time in Texas, but they got the right manager, the right players, and certainly the right GM to steer the ship. And Bruce, I want to take a second, and I don't want to talk too much Yanks on our episode here, but can we just talk about Aaron Judge for a second? I mean, it's sort of, you become numb to it, how great this guy is. I mean, he came into today, Sunday, May 4th, batting 429 with a 1312 OPS. I mean, let that sink in. He's playing every day.
We'll let something else sink in for a second, Nico. If Judge comes out, hits a home run and a single, and then goes 2 for 5 for the day, his batting average and his OPS go down. That is how good he is right now. That is how historic what he's doing is right now. He is having the best offensive season in the history of the game, and nobody's talking about it. I mean, yeah, you see numbers flash up, but if you remember, I remember when Barry Bonds was hitting all those home runs, everybody's walking him, and even in May, people were like, Bonds is making a run. Nobody's talking about what Aaron Judge is doing. It leaves me like you're speechless about it because you don't know where to go with it. Nobody puts up these kind of numbers. Nobody ever has. Yeah. It's incredible to sit there and watch the numbers pile up, and he's doing it quietly, and he's not talking about it. He's just going out there and he's mashing every day.
Yeah, like we mentioned in previous episodes, I feel like I hate to say he's underrated because I certainly don't underrate him. I mean, I appreciate Aaron Judge and what we're watching, day in and day out. But those postseason struggles seem to just kind of, they just loom over his, image. And I still think he'll figure it out and he'll have a big postseason. But what we're watching is special. It's Barry Bonds, it's Mark McGwire, it's just all those guys. And like you mentioned, it's historic.
Remember remember those seasons when Alex Rodriguez was with the Yankees, and he's just putting up numbers, and then they go to the playoffs, and he's in automatic out. And then he put it together that one year, and they won the World Series that year.
Right.
He had a great postseason. Yankees rode it. And there's something inside of me that says, in spite of a beleaguered pitching staff, in spite of not knowing what they're doing with their infield, and in spite of Aaron Boone, like it feels like there's something there that wasn't there before with the Yankees. And no, they're not winning like Detroit's winning, and they're not winning like the Mets are winning, but they are winning.
Yeah. No, like we talked about on our pre-show, the AL West it's kind of funky. They're just kind of all stuck in the middle. Nobody's really pushing ahead. Nobody's falling behind too much. We certainly don't expect Tampa to be a factor, throughout the course of the season. Toronto, they've never proved it to us, and but again, they've got a pretty good club there, so you kind of expect them to be competitive. In Boston,
they're done. Toronto's done. I'm telling you, take it to the bank. Toronto's done. They had a little run for 3 or 4 days. They're done. So is Tampa. I mean, Tampa, like you said, you don't expect them to be there, but they're also not just going to go away. Cash is better managing than that, right?
Yeah.
But no, I don't expect anything from Toronto.
Yeah, I don't either. I sort of, like we've talked about in the past, they're just one of those teams that they're just a classic pretender. They've got a nice little roster. They've got some nice players, but for some reason they just can't get it right. But hey, I expect them to be competitive. They'll give New York, Boston, Baltimore, all those teams a tough series, come, May, June, July, August, etc. There'll be a tough
talent there that they're going to be a thorn. They're not the White Sox and they're not the Twins. They'll be tough. But
right. Hey, the Twins won 2 out of 3 in Boston. So shout out to Plouffi's Twins. Hey, they're
Alex Cora's got to figure that out up there in Boston. Like we were talking about
yeah.
earlier, Boston can't seem to stay reliable enough to be taken really seriously, but they're better than that. They are. They're better than that.
Yeah, you sort of wonder. I think Boston will eventually take off. I'd like to think they can. The, the lineup is there. The rotation's improved. Alex Bregman has been everything they expected and more.
And more. Yeah.
He's been not quite Aaron Judge. Nobody is, but Bregman's been awesome.
No, Brett. There's nobody in Boston that approaches Aaron Judge type discussion. But Bregman is a star. He is.
Oh yeah,
he's a star, and he's going to go out there. He's going to play a solid third base. I heard an interview with Alex Cora earlier in the week where he talked about Bregman's defense a little bit, and that one of the factors that they realized early on was that Alex had never had to go and play home games in April in the cold. So he's fielding ground balls. He's doing his work, but that ball feels different. The air feels different, and he had to get used to that. And now he's better at it, and he's gotten used to it. And obviously, the weather's warming up as well. So you're going to see a better defensive Alex Bregman right now. But it was just something he had to get used to. And no one really factored that in when everybody looked and said, oh, we moved Raffy Devers from third. He's a terrible third baseman, and Bregman's throwing the ball away. Well, that's why.
Right. Yeah. I like Boston. There's just a ton to like there in that lineup, and I agree. I agree with the Alex Cora. They got to figure it out. They got to start pulling ahead a little bit, because it's a little worrisome that they're just kind of, sitting around 500, game above. They just can't play consistent baseball yet. They're playing so many close games and they're losing so many close games. So
and everything is 500 about them. They're 3-3 against teams over 500, which is actually a little bit troubling. If you look at that and think to yourself, wait a second, they're barely above 500, and they've only played 6 games against teams over 500. But they're 3-3. They're 9-10 away. They're 9-8 at home. And so you're seeing a lot of mediocre numbers out of them. But I agree with you 100%. I think they're going to break out and really make a run. This is a playoff team. They are. I feel it. They're a playoff team.
They have to. I tell you, that fan base is getting really tired of not making the playoffs. You know how it is in Boston. You got to win. It's just like New York. The managers got to win. The players have to perform. Otherwise, they're going to make some tough decisions. I wanted to give a couple of performances of this past week. I wanted to touch base. Riley Green of the Tigers, young superstar. I mean, I tell you, he's a quality player. And if this kid can stay in the field and stay healthy, I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation in the American League. He came into Sunday batting .429. He hit 4 home runs. And he's just got to stay healthy and continue to grow, because he's a superstar. Just 24 years old, Bruce. He's a young player.
The whole team is young if they're besides Javi Baez, which is more amazing than anything else. We talked about the Orioles for the last 3 years and their young core, and these guys that we were like, man, they're going to be a juggernaut for years. And yes, they're struggling this year. I'm not talking about them to talk poorly about them. Nobody's talking about the Tigers, about Torkelson coming along, Riley Green, Casey Mize is just electric, Tarek Skubal. These guys are young, all of them. I mean, Mize is a couple years older, but not really. These guys are young, and they're playing top-tier baseball right now. And I hope it continues for fans in Detroit, for everybody, because we haven't had a really good Tigers team in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been about 10, 12 years since they've been playing meaningful baseball come, April and May. But Riley Green's just one piece of a lot of good players in Detroit and a lot of young talent. Max Fried for the Yankees, Bruce. I mean, he's been flawless. He's been absolutely flawless. I saw a stat earlier today that the Yankees are 7-0 with Max Fried starting, and 12-14 coming into Sunday today when he's not pitching. So he has taken that, that burden of, no Garrett Cole, and he has been that ace that they want him to be. So let's hope Max Fried can stay healthy and continue to produce, because if the Yankees have, deep playoff ambitions, they're going to need Max Fried to be that guy that they had hoped, and he's delivering. So
he really is delivering. I said it, I think, on our opening day broadcast, that everybody freaked out when Garrett Cole went down, and I freaked out a little bit too. I was like, man, again, how long have they got to go without the guy they're paying to be the guy who stops the bleeding, the guy you can count on when the chips are down and when the chips are up? And he hasn't been there for 2 years now. And last year, Luis Gil stood up and said, "I'll do it. I got this." And this year they have Max Fried, and I remember looking at it going, well, if they did it with Gil last year, why can't Fried step in and be the guy that they can rely on? He's been good in the past. Why can't he be good again? And he is. He's been everything the Yankees needed him to be, and they're getting Gil back soon.
Yeah, and that's why I continue to say, Bruce, I'm. To me, it's the Yankees in the AL East until somebody can prove otherwise. That's where I'm at in the AL East. I understand the Yankees have their flaws, and Juan Soto's not there, Garrett Cole's out for the year, but they're still winning ball games, and they're getting
plus
contributions.
52 run differential, Nico. Plus 52 with 187 runs scored in the season. Nobody misses Juan Soto. Nobody.
No, they don't, and they're playing
because they have Ben Rice now.
Yeah, he's been a beast. I tell you, that kid's been a beast.
Is the guy that has come out of nowhere in that offense. I should have looked him up before I mentioned his name, but Ben Rice is somebody nobody's talking about, and Giancarlo Stanton is going to come back, and you got a guy with a 915 OPS and 8 home runs, who is your first baseman of the future. Sorry, Paul Goldschmidt. Ben Rice is the guy. I mean, Paul's hitting the ball. He's playing good. Don't get me wrong. Ben Rice is the first baseman of the New York Yankees next year. There's no question about it unless something happens. He's getting on base 356 and slugging 559. How do you not play this kid? Who cares if Giancarlo Stanton comes back? Right. The Yankees have a problem they have to deal with there.
Yeah, we'll see. If he keeps hitting, it would be silly not to play him, like you said. And hey, Paul Goldschmidt, like you mentioned, Bruce, he's having a great season. I got a nickname for him, Paulie Singles. He's not really hitting so much. He's knocking the ball around, and he's getting on base, and he's playing really well. So shout out to Goldschmidt. And
870 OPS, 394 on base percentage, hitting three. How do you can't complain about it. You can't complain about it. He maybe he's not hitting the home runs you might want him to hit, but still, why? What for? The Yankees need a guy who gets on base. He's doing it. Right?
And he's doing it. My last thoughts on the American League, Bruce, before I pass it along to you with your National League, is our good friend Mike Trout back on the injured list. It sounds like a minor bone bruise. That's what they're calling it.
That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. Yeah, that's how it. Yeah, that I feel like we go through this every year with Trout, and the Angels keep losing ball games. I think they're like 7 games under 500. They lost today to the Tigers. So I just want to hear your thoughts on Trout and the Angels, and that whole situation and for what it is.
Man, the only person that might be the only 2 people that might be more disappointed about Mike Trout going on IL are Mike Trout and Ron Washington. But I heard the news and I was like, oh, you have to be kidding me. We're not going to see 150 games of Mike Trout. We moved him to right field, hoping that it would make a difference. And I said at the beginning of the year, I don't know if you remember it, Nico, the guy should be DHing. I don't know if that makes a difference here with this injury or not. But put him in bubble wrap, for goodness sakes. I will say all that, whilst then turn around and tell you that as much as I love the guy, he's hitting 179.
Yeah.
He's got 9 home runs. He's got 9 home runs, but he's hitting 179. His OPS is a very pedestrian 727. That's not Mike Trout.
Yeah. He was paid handsomely, and he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the all-time greats when he was healthy. And it's unfortunate that he's had the career thus far with, the lack of playoff appearances, as well as now the injuries for several years. But Hey, I hope he comes back, Bruce, and I hope we get to
He
see Mike
hasn't,
Trout play
he hasn't
baseball.
played a full season since 2020, where he played 53 out of 60 games, and that we know that's not really a full season, right? He's
Right.
played he's played 36 games in 2021, 119 in 2022, and then 82, 29 last year, and 29 this year.
Right.
And he's still, so we'll take that, put it on one side, and then I'm going to tell you that he still has 387 career home runs and 972 RBIs. If this man can get back on the field, we'll get him to 400 and 1,000 this year. He's got to get back on the field. He's got to get back on the field.
Well, let's hope so. And I don't want to stick a fork in the Angels this season. I don't know if you'd be willing to go that far, Bruce, but it doesn't look promising in Angel Land. They keep losing.
You know what I said about the Blue Jays earlier?
Yeah.
You said so. I didn't interrupt you earlier when you said nobody's out of it except the White Sox. The Angels are out of it. Nico. The Angels are out of it. I believe in the Blue Jays more than I believe in the Angels, and I feel bad for Mike Trout, but I also feel bad for Ron Washington. I remember when he took that job, I thought to myself, Ronnie, you're better than that. You're better than the Angels. Why am I saying that? I don't know why I'm saying that, but the Angels are a team they're a team that invests poorly. Pirates don't invest, right? Pirates don't spend any money. They will keep a guy from getting at bat so they don't have to pay him an extra $250,000 or whatever that was that year. The Angels spend money. They just are writing checks to guys who don't show up.
Yeah, they've been notorious for paying the wrong players. They've done it. The Albert Pujols contract, obviously the Anthony Rendon contract. You can even go back to the Josh Hamilton contract.
You can go back. You know what? You can go back to the Josh Hamilton contract, because when that happened, I remember thinking to myself, what are they doing? Yes, he put up some good numbers in Texas. But we all knew what his struggles were, and there was no way you could guarantee he was going to be on the field.
Yeah.
And as much as you pull for a guy like that, and you do, right? You don't want to think that he's going to continue to struggle with his mental and emotional and all those things that surround the game and aren't the game that Josh did. Because when he was mentally healthy and focused on the game, he was a great hitter. And the Angels poured money into the guy, and sadly it didn't work out. But Albert Pujols put up some pretty good numbers in LA. He produced. He certainly maybe wasn't quite the guy everybody hoped he might be, but he was a good ball player, not a great ball player.
Right. Yeah, I think it just aged poorly, like so many of those contracts do. Right. I mean, Miguel Cabrera was another good example. One of the greatest hitters, in history of baseball. But when you pay these guys to $35-40 million as they go into those late 30s, it just you know what you're getting into. But I don't want to.
People still seem to pour money into them, even though you should know what you're getting. You should know. Why don't you know? Yeah. What's wrong?
It's a topic for another. It's a topic for another episode, Bruce, when it comes to these baseball contracts. But hey, with that being said, let's talk some National League. And what are your thoughts on this past week in the NL?
National League. I don't think we can talk about the National League without talking about the LA Dodgers this week. LA Dodgers 7-game winning streak coming into today. I know they're playing the Braves. Jason's down there hoping that they break that 7-game winning streak. But the Dodgers are starting to show signs of being the team we thought they were going to be. They beat up on the Braves 10-3. Ohtani homered, Freeman homered. Roki Sasaki actually looked good and grabbed the win. I've been very uneasy about Sasaki, where for his excellence lasted an inning long every game, and then he would kind of start to lose the feel for the ball or lose the feel for the strike zone, and then he'd come back again and look really good. He's finally starting to put some things together, and that's big for the Dodgers. They have a really long IL list right now, and there's some big names on that IL list. So for the Dodgers, it's very important for them to start putting this string of wins together. Some consistency in scoring runs and some consistency in pitching. They've scored 179 runs and they're plus 43. So they're really looking like a good team now, instead of a team that was just keeping it going until they could figure it out. It seems like they might be figuring it out a little bit. So I'm high on the Dodgers right now. I continue to be high on the Mets. As much as I might worry that they're going to slip, and I do think they will, they're still playing some pretty good baseball. They're getting good performances from some guys. Brandon Nimmo, I'll talk about him in a little bit. Pete Alonso is the guy who's benefiting from Juan Soto right now, where Aaron Judge benefited last year. This year it's Pete Alonso, who's benefiting from having another guy in the lineup who can hit the ball a long way. Down at Camden Yards last night, they have, you probably remember this, Nico, they have little placards or little baseballs in Utah, on Utah Street, where the longest home runs are hit, where they landed. And we happened to see one from Juan Soto last night, nice and shiny, brand new from last year, where he hit a 440-foot home run there in Camden Yards. So hopefully Soto will start to pick it up for the Mets. But the rest of the offense is churning along. Francisco Lindor is having a really nice season. So we really can't go very long without talking about the Mets anymore. And their pitching staff is still getting it done. The other team that I'll talk about is those Chicago Cubbies out there in the Central, Nico, that you like quite a bit. And I'm looking at that Central Division, and besides the Reds, I don't see anybody worth talking about besides the Cubs. The Reds are starting to play some good baseball. They're a feast or famine team, but the Cubs are consistent. They're averaging over 6 runs a game. They're going to keep that offensive juggernaut going. They beat up on the Brewers. Pete Crow Armstrong is having a really nice season in Chicago. He's becoming a guy that maybe some people thought he was really going to be. And we're seeing it. He's still young. It's early in the season. I don't want to overstate him too much, but he's looking really good, especially hitting that big 3-run homer during Jameson Tyon's start, helping him win that game over the Brewers. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute as well. But I'm starting to get excited about the Cubs. Is what I'm saying, Nico. Because you kept after me about them.
Bruce, in the NL Central, I'm disappointed in Milwaukee. I don't like how they operate. They lose players and replace them and expect the same thing year in and year out, and they've done that for several years, right? When they lose Corbin Burns, but they incorporate somebody else. They lost Adames this past year. And you're just seeing that team. They just look like a weaker ball club. And, again, we're sitting here on May 4th. We don't want to say, hey, the Cubs are the team to beat. But like you mentioned, outside of the Reds, I don't see anybody in that division with that firepower that can contend with the Cubbies. And for the Cubs, Bruce, Craig Counsell's in a situation where he's got to win this year. Craig Counsell.
He does, and I think it's a really important thing to point out, Nico. I talked about Counsell early in the year and compared him to his time in Milwaukee, and when Stearns was there, and he's got his college coach there, and he's got all this support system that now he doesn't have in Chicago anymore. And maybe it just took him a year to really ground himself and remind himself, hey, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I can do this. I don't need that support. So maybe he's starting to put that together for himself or the Cubs. And we're starting to see that. Whereas, like you said about Milwaukee, I looked at the team before the season and I'm like, I don't see where the offense is coming from. I don't see the pitcher who's going to step up and say, I'm the guy. Don't worry about it. I got this today. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a very mediocre Milwaukee team. They're not terrible. Don't get me wrong. Very mediocre team in a very weak division.
Right.
And that is exactly what we're seeing. The Cubs plus 62 run differential of 208 runs scored as of right now. I read your numbers from earlier, but that's because I prepped it before today's games. 208 runs scored. They are 15-11 against teams over 500. You can't ask for more than that. I mean, those are good, solid numbers. the Reds are having a nice little season too, only 2.5 games behind the Cubs with a plus 37 run differential. So watch out. If the Reds can be consistent, if they can get on a track where they're just playing good baseball every day instead of being good one day and terrible the next, that division might be interesting between those two teams. And that's it. There's nothing else in that division this year. We're not going to see anyone come out of that, or the wild card, unfortunately, because of the West. So somebody's going to win that division to get to the postseason. And right now, I'd be hard pressed to bet against the Cubs there.
Yeah, and then also with the Cardinals, Bruce, you're really starting to see how they're just a team in transition. They're just committed to transitioning the team. The GM is leaving at the end of the year. Chaim Bloom is going to be taking over, and you're starting to see that, hey, they want to win ball games, but, it's not that important to them. I think they're just preparing for the future. And St. Louis, you expect them to be competitive, to be tough, but, will Nolan Arenado eventually waive his no trade and get dealt? It's possible. He's been stubborn about it. He could have got a trade to Houston this over the winter. So I think St. Louis is a team in transition. I don't think they're going to be a factor in the Central. So again, that just leads me to the Cubs. I just think that the Cubs they're doing it. They're proving it. The offense has been unbelievable. Putting Tucker in that lineup and hey, so far that they're the team to be in the Central. And I think with the Reds, give them some time, right? Francona is still trying to get his feet wet there, and they got a good team there with Dela Cruz, and they've got some nice pieces, and they'll be a factor. I'm not sure if they'll win the division, but look out for the Reds. I love Francona, and you know what he can do.
Yeah, I think the Reds could win the division. I'm not convinced they will, but I think they could. If a couple of guys on the Cubs go down injury, they already lost Justin Steele, and at the moment they're still chugging along. So we'll see if that continues that way. But the Reds have pieces in their puzzle, and they can put it together. They're certainly not a team that doesn't have the tools. They're just not putting them together yet. Watch Hunter Green. Hunter Green's the guy to watch there on that pitching staff because he's kind of a wild card. We know what Lodolo's going to do. We know about Martinez, and Brady Singer's going to get you those innings that he got in Kansas City and really help them along there. But Hunter Green, if he really emerges as the ace of that staff, like he has the capability to do, watch out for that team when we start to get closer to short series at the end of the year that matter. He is a guy to watch. So those are my teams that I'm kind of watching. I want to also mention that I'm watching the Phillies play some really bad baseball, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. As much as we've talked about them as being a potential playoff team in the West, I got to be honest with you, I'm not seeing it. They're very mediocre right now, as are the Phillies, by the way. And I hate to say it, but the Phillies aren't that team that they should be. They need to be better. Every time I watch the Phillies, all I think is this is terrible baseball, and that game was so ugly. And they win a lot of them, but they're ugly. It's ugly baseball.
Again, we've talked Phillies. They're mostly the same team they've been for several years now, and you saw them get to the World Series, then they lost. They got to the NLDS, lost to Arizona, and then last year they were just flat against the Mets. And again, they're still a very similar team that they were in years past. So. I'm not quite giving up on the Phillies. I still think that they'll be a factor in the NL East. I think that the Mets. I don't trust the pitching staff on the Mets. I just, they've threaded a needle for such a long time now, and they're figuring it out. But I still think the Phillies have a shot in the East. And
they absolutely do. But they need to clean their act up. They need to start playing better baseball. They're capable of it. This is a team that's capable of going out there and just knocking other teams off. Right now, they look like that they're all working against each other as they're out there in the team. They're not functioning as a unit. And the funny thing about it is, Bryson Stott at the beginning of the year came out and said, listen, enough of this daycare stuff. We're not kids. We need to come out here and just win ball games. And so they stopped doing those fun things in the clubhouse. Brandon Marsh and Alec Boehm and All those guys who are just out there having a great time, they're not having a good time. They're not having fun, and you can see it. It's so evident that that team is fighting each other. And I don't mean like they're against each other and arguing. That's not what I mean. But when they're on there, they're not all moving in the same direction. That's what we're seeing. They need to get back to that. This team can be a juggernaut. And the Mets pitching isn't going to hold up. Doesn't mean it's going to collapse either. So the Phillies need to pull it together. They went out and ended up getting one of the best arms in the league that was available in Jesus Luzardo. He has absolutely produced. Christian Sanchez is producing. Aaron Nola, who we'll talk about later, showed up. They're there. They just need to realize that they're all on the same team.
I have to ask you, Bruce, do you think that they should make a move at the deadline to sort of retool that team, maybe flip like a Castellanos, or is Alec Boehm a possible trade piece? I wouldn't trade him, but
they put Alec Boehm out on a stick and said, anybody want this guy? And nobody wanted it. Why would they want him now? And I'm not saying there's no value there. Alec Boehm is a decent third baseman defensively. He's not great. He's a decent third baseman defensively. He puts bat to ball, really good bat to ball skills, and he plays with passion out there. He's a good ball player. Problem is the Phillies want what they think he's worth, and other people don't think he's worth that. Because he's young, he's got control, he's controllable, and he puts the ball in play. He doesn't strike out 200 times. The rest of the league looks at him as an average third baseman who hit the ball around the yard a little bit, but he's not hitting 35 home runs. So the value is questionable for some other team. They're not going to re-sign Castellanos. I guarantee you that. He walks at the end of the season. So he could very well be trade bait once we roll into June and July as somebody we know can hit 30 home runs. He has been nothing short of an iron horse on the right field, playing every game, every day, and playing a very, very respectable right field at it while we're at it. Defensively, he's been very solid. So he could absolutely be trade bait. But what the Phillies are doing, staring at their minor leaguers and hoping they're the answer. And maybe they are, but
they could be, Bruce, but I feel like
I struggle with that as an answer when you're saying Andrew Painter is going to come in and save the rotation. Maybe he's good. Don't get me wrong. He is. But so they asked who's our center fielder of the future, and they're going to say, well, it's Crawford. So we're not going to bring Marsh back either. And Rojas will just be the fourth guy out, just like he's been for the last couple of years. Instead of actually going out and looking for a solution, they're just really heavily relying on these minor leaguers and these kids to be the answer. And, I really hope that they are, because Phillies fans, I've been at the games, when the Phillies come back, or when the Phillies are riding high, there's no place like Citizens Bank Park to be. There really isn't. Those fans get behind that team. They love that team so much. But I've also been at Phillies games where there's 17 people in the stands and nobody can care what's going on in the field. They turn like that on these teams, and they will turn on this team too. So I agree with you. They absolutely, they'll be there. The question is just going to be if they show up and go in the wild card round and go out quietly again, and they haven't done anything to try and be better. I don't know how the fans are going to react. I really don't, and that'll be a shame for a team that really should be a lot better than they are right now.
Yeah, and Bryce Harper's, I believe he's 32, going to be 33 later this year. He's been around for a while, and he's a guy that you want to see back in the World Series and try to get a ring. Like
you do.
Same.
Yeah, you want to see him. You want to see him get a ring. And he's out there playing hardy homer today. He had his 6th homer of the season. He's playing nice baseball for the most part. I don't know that it's an MVP season for him, but he's having a nice season. Schwarber hit his 10th or 11th home run today. I forget what it is. I think I have it written down here. You got guys there putting in performances. It's just not a team effort. But we do want to mention, since we mentioned Schwarber, he did hit a home run today. His on-base streak continues. It's the longest running streak in baseball right now, which is great. You mentioned the Mariners. The Mariners' 28 games on base streak. So he is absolutely like you said, starting to show up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Kyle Schwarber is an interesting phenomenon, right? He never bats for average, although this year it's much better.
This year he is. Yeah. This year he is. His strikeouts are down. He's putting the ball in play. The contract here. But I do think the Phillies will re-sign Schwarber. I do. I think they're going to pay him. I just don't see it in Castellanos' future because they're not going to re-sign both of them.
Any other thoughts on the National League, Bruce?
Well, I do want to mention Brandon Nimmo has had a heck of a week. He's hit 7 hits, 3 home runs. He's hitting 389 on the past week with an 833 slug. That's pretty, you want to talk about someone who's got an 833 slug up there in New York, doing some really great things. I mentioned Freeman homered earlier in a game, but Freddie coming into a 1.472 OPS for the past week with a couple of home runs, and he's putting the ball in play, driving in some runs. And I'd be remiss not to mention his buddy there, Shohei, with a 1.2 OPS for the week with a couple of home runs. The Dodgers are playing as a team now, and we're seeing the results of that. Pete Alonso had 8 hits this week with 2 homers and a 1.3 OPS. And I got to give love. It's like I did when, back when the Rockies had a guy hitting big home runs, having a really great offensive week. Kyle Stowers down in Miami, 4 home run week, 1.421 OPS. There is some light in Miami. It's just one lonely guy named Kyle. So I don't want to leave those guys out of the mix. For on the pitching side, Yamamoto has been very consistent in LA. I want to keep mentioning him because he's just been that good. He struck out 6 over 6 in his game against Braves. Really great performance. Robbie Ray over in San Francisco keeping the Giants afloat, having them keep up with the Dodgers, while San Diego, they're not slipping, but they're not quite what they were. Arizona is slipping, but the Giants aren't. 7-inning performance with 8 strikeouts against the Rockies this week. I mentioned Jameson Taillon earlier, 6 innings and 5 strikeouts against the Brewers. Mentioned that. I don't want to leave out a really good performance by Bailey Falter of the Pirates against the Padres, where he struck out 6 over 7 and win. But that leads me to the final thing I want to talk about, and that's Paul Skeens giving up 3 home runs in an inning in Chicago. Paul Skeens, for the first time, I think, in his career, wasn't on. He was actually not on. He had trouble with the strike zone. There were 86 pitches in that performance. And in that performance, only 49 of them were strikes. That's not Paul Skeens. Skeens is a guy who goes in aggressive, gets ahead, and then puts you away. And he just wasn't able to do it for some reason in Chicago. It was just a bad day for Paul. But hopefully, he'll learn from it and grow a little bit. But you want to be 2-to-1 on that strike to ball ratio, and Paul knows that. And I think he'll just come out and continue to be good. But you don't want to let that go by, because Paul Skeens is human, everybody.
Yeah, he is. And let's not forget, he did throw that terrific game against the Dodgers. So, maybe a little hiccup.
Yeah. And that's, you take one and then the other, and that's okay. It's just one game.
It happens, right? And hey, for Pirates fans, hey, at least every 5th day you got Paul Skeens Day, right? Because it's looking pretty bad in Pittsburgh. Pretty bad in Pittsburgh.
When we're talking about Bailey Falter, then that's not great.
Yeah, but that's good stuff, Bruce, on the NL. And it's the NL versus the AL is quite different. I mean, you can chalk it up, and just the NL West, it's just night and day compared to the AL. But so any series looking ahead, Bruce? I got a couple here in the American League, although it's an interleague series. Starting tomorrow in Yankee Stadium, they welcome the Padres for a 3-game set. That's a fun one right there. That'll be interesting to see if the Yankees can hang with the Padres. And
I think that'll be an interesting series. I'm not really sure what to make of how that's going to go yet, to be honest with you. But it should be interesting to watch to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and then Texas and Boston is going to be another good series. That one doesn't start till Thursday, but two teams that are just kind of like, we talked about earlier on the show. They're just kind of sitting around 500 and, trying to find their footing. But yeah, that's a couple in the AL. Any NL series?
Well, I don't want you to not mention the Athletics and the Mariners series coming up. You mentioned it earlier. Those are the top two teams in the American League West, and you have one team that's slugging and another team that's negative in run differential. It's very interesting to see if the Athletics can actually play baseball. I'm not sure. Yeah. Well, it's hard to say. I mean, they are in second place. The record isn't terrible, but every other metric shows them as being a bad team. So it'll be that. Just saying, it'll be an interesting series to watch. The series in the National League I'm watching this week are the Cubs and Giants. That should be pretty entertaining baseball right there. The series I'm not watching is the Tigers versus the Rockies.
Yeah, that's yeah, that one's hey, but you never know, right? You never know. The Rockies were on a 2-game heater, and then they
I mean, they doubled their wins this week. They have 6 wins now instead of 3, like they had last week.
All right, Bruce. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up here? Yeah, I mean,
folks, we're into May. April's over. Can't win a division in April, but you sure can lose it. And we know a couple of teams already have. So
yeah.
But what we are going to see is divisions start to settle. It's going to start to come through the strainer. The teams that actually are decent, the cream is going to rise a little bit. I think we are seeing that a little bit in some areas. I'm not convinced the AL West is one of them yet. But I am convinced that the NL Central is. So let's just see what happens.
Great stuff, man. And again, to all our viewers and listeners here, Romantic About Baseball podcast. We're on Apple, iTunes, and YouTube. And we encourage all of our listeners and our followers, if you have any questions, send us an email at baseballromantics@gmail.com. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up here in days and weeks ahead. We got some interviews with some authors, as well as some other stuff cooking. And, we want to hear from you. Please send us questions. And
great time, right. Nico. Thanks. It was great. And don't forget also, gang, we're also on Spotify. Subscribe everywhere.
Yeah, we're all over the place. And, of course, we got our Facebook group, where Jason does all of his great work. And Jason will be back next week. So we hope he's I just checked, Bruce. Looks like the Braves are up 4-0 on the Dodgers. So hopefully they can steal one,
Jason's having a good night then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you next week, and we will see you at the ballpark.